Welcome, and thank you, Tejas, for a great keynote. Welcome to our talk, Prompt and Developer. And you might ask yourself, what am I doing here? Why are we talking about AI in a React conference?
I have no idea.
I have no idea as well. But this talk is going to be super cool, super interesting, filled with dad jokes, so just be prepared. A little bit about myself. I'm Liad. I'm a front-end architect and a web enthusiast. And since this is going to be an AI talk or a generative AI talk, we thought that it would be better to maybe move to AI-generated avatars, which is pretty cool. And in my free time, I'm also an analog astronaut, meaning that I'm doing space simulations on Earth, so space mission simulations on Earth.
And I'm Adam Klein, CTO and co-founder at Covver. At Covver, our product takes your logo, analyzes it, and automatically creates personalized branded online swag stores where people can order whatever they want on demand, shipped globally, like this cool t-shirt with the Midjourney avatar of me.
Okay, so let's start our talk. So, like I said, it's going to be filled with dead jokes. Why are we speaking about AI in a UI conference? Because
I don't know.
The one thing that we can tell you is that
this talk is not about philosophical discussions whether AI will replace us.
Because it will. And this talk is definitely not about showing generated AI cats images from Midjourney, even though Adam insisted.
Yeah, just one.
Okay.
It's cool. It's the king of cats.
And this is the slide that I like the most. It's not about fueling the hype or raising seed money.
Even though if there are any investors in the audience.
Yeah, you're going to see some cool things here. And most importantly, this talk was not written by ChatGPT. Okay. So again, you ask yourself, why? Why am I here? Why am I here in a React conference? And these guys came and talk about AI and generative AI. What's left to say about this subject? And it's a good question. Keeping up with the rate of changes in AI is impossible. We had to rewrite this talk about 4 times in the past few months, and this talk is probably going to be obsolete as we give it. So it's something that everybody should know. The rise of large language models, or LLMs, is something that you can't ignore anymore, right? Everybody knows GPT, we're going to talk about it, and everybody knows the magic that you can do with it. Actually, Sam Altman, which is the CEO of OpenAI, maybe one of the most important actors in this field. So he was in Israel a few weeks ago, and he gave a talk. And it was really funny because he gave a talk in the afternoon, and Guns N' Roses played at the night, and it was harder to get tickets to Sam Altman's talk than to Guns N' Roses. That's how important this field is. So let's dive a little bit to the futuristic story of large language models, or LLMs.
But wait, Liad. LLMs language processing is not so futuristic. I mean, it's been around since the 90s, like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
What? Okay, so let me tell you a story all about how large language models flipped our life upside down. So it all started when people start training AI models on text. They would take chunks of text, like this one from Aladdin, and they would tell the model, okay, I'm giving you a sentence, I'm removing a word, try to guess what was the word that I removed. So in this case, it was you need to bring the princess, and it just ran all over the text, and in this case, it had to guess that the word road is related to horse, and people saw that as we did this kind of training, the model started to develop an inner meaning of these words, an inner representation of what those words meant, even though we didn't tell it. And all of a sudden it knew to have relations between brother and sister, the same as the relation between king and queen, for example. And we can do really cool things with it. We can take the inner representation of the word queen, subtract the word woman, add the word man, and then get back a king. So the model started to understand a little bit what those words meant. We can do really cool math of taking a representation of images, for example, a castle, subtract the word day, add the word night, and then get an image of castle in the night. And at that point, models started to become what we call generative models. It's not just answering questions or giving us insights on things in the world, but also generating new things. The problem is that those kinds of neural network, they were really amazing when you had to work on short text generation or classification tasks. They're really amazing. But they failed miserably when we had to work on large text or understand semantic meanings of things. We all remember examples from the last years of...
You have the wrong clicker.
We all remember examples from the last years of models trying to write Shakespeare songs, for example. It looks like a Shakespeare song, it sounds like a Shakespeare song, but it doesn't make any sense, right? Well, your wit is in the care in the side of that. Or models trying to create a mathematical proof. It looks like a mathematical proof, like if you glimpse on it, you think it's a proof, but it doesn't make any sense. That was the problem with those models.
Right, so this is where transformers came into play and completely revolutionized how these language models
I got it. Okay, so as you know, Transformers, which is like a big robot that turns into a car. Now in data science, the idea of...
we dropped that joke.
We dropped the joke? Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Let's take a moment of silence for that joke.
Yeah.
So we're talking about this transformer, which is part of a deep learning neural network. And what it does is during the training process, it learns where it needs to put the attention in order to predict the next word. So it doesn't just look at one word at a time and tries to predict the next word, which doesn't make sense because sometimes you need to relate to something that was written in the beginning of the text. So it can look at the entire context, like thousands of words, and based on all of them, predict what is the most likely next word.
I also preferred my version. It was better.
I should have made the presentation. No, you should have. Cool. So transformers started this revolution, all of these amazing intelligent LLMs. The most famous one is obviously GPT, which stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer.
Catchy.
Yeah, very easy to pronounce name.
So, I mean, is it all that it does? Just predicts the next word? I mean, all the fuss is about a glorified word predictor?
Yeah, it's really strange. Like, how can this thing be intelligent or appear to be intelligent? Companies like OpenAI found another secret sauce, which sounds obvious, but it was counterintuitive at the time and against everything that the literature said, that the more you make these models big or even huge, the more intelligent they become. So GPT-3 has 175 billion parameters. GPT-4 already has 220 billion parameters. And GPT-5, who knows how big it will be.
These models are so big, you know what they should have called them?
What?
Node models. I told you, Adam.
Great joke. I love the jokes. So, and we can actually see the versions of the models actually starting to be intelligent. I'm telling you, they're starting to be intelligent.
I don't believe you. I don't believe
Believe
you.
me.
I don't.
Believe.
Okay.
Ask me a riddle.
Okay, let's think of a riddle. Let's say you're in the year 1925,
Yes.
and you see a newspaper with the title, "A gun from World War I was found yesterday." What's the problem with this scenario?
I don't know. Let's ask GPT-3. Well, GPT-3 gives this answer that looks like it makes sense, but it didn't get the gist of the riddle. But when we ask GPT-4, it actually got it right. And it knows that you can't talk about World War I before there was World War II. It doesn't make any sense.
Ooh.
Think about it.
Nice.
And there's another cool talk you should see called Sparks of AGI, where they show they take instructions of creating a 3D game with HTML and JavaScript. And GPT-3 did like an okay job, but when they gave the same prompt to GPT-4, it really followed the instructions perfectly, created a real 3D game with HTML and JavaScript, with players and winners and keystrokes and everything. So generative AI is exploding in tech, in images, in creepy octopus videos. It even helped us create this presentation.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So we might ask ourselves,
We're in the wrong conference.
We're in the wrong conference, right? You're probably wondering, okay, maybe React Server Components wasn't that bad of an alternative to go to, but this is a React conference, and we're interested on how AI can help us write React code or write even React apps. And here we enter the era of LLMs or large language models that code, that knows how to write code. Now, everybody here knows ChatGPT. Everybody here tried to ask ChatGPT to write a React hook, and it does it pretty good, right? It writes pretty good code. You say, okay, write a use timeout hook, and it can actually pass code review. It's not bad.
Better than my code.
Yeah, than your code. GitHub Copilot is something that's already old news. Everybody is using it. It's a code completion or code auto-completion tool that was specifically trained on code. So you can do something like that. You just write few words, and then it continues the rest of the code. And it gave rise to what we call the tab-driven development, where you just write a few characters, and then you just do tab, 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 tab. And it's not bad. And it's also suggesting you, okay, you converted an array to map. Maybe you want to convert map to an array. And then it just continues on and on and on. That's pretty cool. The good guys the good people in Copilot gave us also Copilot Labs and Copilot X. Let's see it for a second. So Copilot Labs is actually really cool. Let's say I have here this convert array to map function. Really simple, right? But I want Copilot to explain it to me. So I can just open the lab, say explain, and then it asks Copilot, it gives it the code and say, okay, explain this code, explain what this code does. And here you have the explanation, what it does, line by line, which is pretty nice. It can also do more complex things, like convert it, for example, into Python.
Why would we ever want to do that?
Why not?
Convert it to Angular.
We're going to use it in Python conference as well.
Okay.
And the coolest thing, in my opinion, is the brushes. So I can take this code and I can just ask Copilot to make it robust. And now it adds more and more checks just to make sure. I can click it more and more, and it just adds more and more checks just to make sure it's robust. And it can do a lot of other things as well. And the last thing is that I can just mark everything and say, okay, now suggest a test for this code. And when I do suggest a test, it gives us a pretty good test, right? Of converting array to map and a test to that. That's really nice.
Liad?
Yeah.
I don't think we'll have a job in the future.
Yeah, I don't think so as well. You also have a Copilot chat where you can just ask it questions about the code. You can ask here what is the meaning of, let's say, key selector. And that's really nice because that's like chatting with a senior developer sitting next to you and say, here, key selector is a function, da, 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 da. And you can continue. You can say, okay, I know it's a map. How can I use the map object in JavaScript? And you can just chat on and on and on your code, about your code. And it's really addictive. I recommend everyone to try it. It's really nice. And this gave rise to what we call prompt engineering. So in order to converse, in order to interact with those LLMs or those models, we need to know how to ask them things. Because in LLMs, they are very sensitive to how you phrase the question or how you phrase the prompt.
I don't believe you.
I'll show you. Okay, give me a riddle.
We should have rehearsed the document.
Yeah.
So, okay, a riddle. Bob is in the living room. He walks to the kitchen carrying a cup. He puts the ball in the cup and carries the cup to the bedroom. He turns the cup upside down, then walks to the garden. He puts the cup in the garden. He walks to the garage. Where is the ball?
I think the ball is in the bedroom because Bob went to the bedroom, turned the cup over, and then moved to the garden.
Makes
GPT
sense.
thinks the ball is in the garden because it doesn't have any sense of...
Stupid.
Yeah. So let's see how with prompt engineering we can make it function a little bit better. We can use something that's called chain of thought. Asking the same question, just adding the sentence, think carefully and logically, explaining your answer. Who knew?
Who knew?
And when we use this, we can see that on the same question, ChatGPT gives us a step-by-step breakdown of the thought process, and eventually it gets to the conclusion that the ball is still in the bedroom because that's where Bob turned the cap.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable, yeah. Another cool thing that in the last years was introduced was tree of thought, where you can ask ChatGPT act like 3 different experts and debate between yourself until only one expert is right. And that's really nice. But we're interested in act as a. This is the basis of what we're going to do. When you do act as a, you can tell ChatGPT, act as a lawyer, and then ask it a question. Or in our case, act as a front-end developer and try to do something with what I give you. So let's see a demo. I'm taking this prompt, act as a front-end developer, and I want to create a React function. Okay, this is like the beginning. And I want a function of an accordion UI element. So this prompt is very simple, but it tells ChatGPT, it gives it the frame of what we want from it. So if we run it, we can see that it takes everything and then it creates an accordion component, which is pretty nice. And all we had to do is just tell it act as a. So this is nice. We can create React components with ChatGPT.
Okay, but so why don't we just create the whole app and then we can drink coffee, play ping pong?
Oh, I wish I had thought of that. Okay, if we have ChatGPT creating components for us, we can tell it we want to create a whole app.
How?
And this is where things start to get interesting. So when we, as front-end developers, when we get a user story or a spec, in our head, what are we doing? We're taking the spec, we're converting it to some sort of an abstract layout, and then creating components, and then eventually maybe creating stories with a storybook. We started to build something like that, but then we stumbled on this project, React Agent, which is really cool. Mad props to the guys who built it. And the concepts are very similar. This is what we're going to show. The ideas here is what we're going to show right now. Let's see a demo. Live demos in a conference. How did you talk me into this? Okay, so
pray to the god of demos.
Yeah. Okay, so what you can see here, that's a repo, an empty repo. It doesn't have anything. It has an empty index, nothing, and a user story. Let's take a look at the user story. This is what I got from my product manager. I want to build an analytics dashboard. The analytics dashboard should be blah, 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 blah. It should have header and team switcher and, all the product manager talk. So this is all, yeah? This is just the text. I can take this text and I can phrase it in a way that ChatGPT can return the layout of the page that I need for this analytics dashboard. So let's take the prompt. Okay, so now I'm telling ChatGPT this huge prompt, as a front-end developer, blah, 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 I want to create this dashboard. This is the notes that I give you as a front-end developer. This is what I expect you to return. I expect you to return some sort of page layout for this. And eventually, this is the user story that I got. And you can see that ChatGPT actually returns a layout. That's not very convenient. I don't want to go into ChatGPT UI every time I want to do something. I want to do it with ChatGPT API. So what we did, we built a small backend that sends those prompts to ChatGPT. And let's see it in action. Let's say I'm running it. So now what I'm doing is I'm sending ChatGPT this prompt that we just saw, and I'm waiting for it to return a response. So it's going to take a minute.
You have a dead joke?
No.
Developer joke?
Hi. So what's going on here is that I'm sending it in the structure of like a system prompt and then a user prompt. And I'm waiting. Okay, so it returned the JSON. And now I can go into my repo. I see that there's a JSON here. It returned the JSON. That's not very easy to look at it, right? So we have a small tool for visualizing it. This is how it looks like. So the JSON that we just got, this is just a visualizing tool. And you can see that, oh, you don't see it. But you can see the layout. It's not very easy to see.
Skeletons.
Skeletons, yeah, skeletons of the layout. It's in gray, so it's not very easy to see. And the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take this JSON and I'm going to ask ChatGPT from this JSON, just tell me which components I need to build. And I can give it my UI library. I can tell I want to use some material UI or some sort of UI library. So I can do yarn components here.
I don't believe you.
Just see.
It's not going to work.
Okay, so here I'm sending it the JSON that it just gave me, and I'm giving it all of my UI components, and I'm telling it, okay, now return, you can see here, it returns all of the components that I need in order to build this. I have here components JSON. These are all the components that I need in order to build this application, which is really nice. It says which UI components I need to use for every component, how the layout is going to be, which is the parent, which is the child. And now, what I'm going to do with it is I'm going to take this JSON, send it back to ChatGPT, and tell it, take every component here and just generate React components. So I can see that it generates, and I can see here my repo is being filled with React components from ChatGPT, which looks okay, pretty decent. Let's see if it's done, not done yet. So it just takes the layout, just takes the JSON. And now that I have here the React component, let's refresh.
Amazing.
We also have a script to create storybook from it, but we don't have a lot of time, so.
I forgot the confetti.
Yeah.
So our message is simple. The world is evolving, and we want to evolve with it. We want to adapt to it. Just like the skills you needed as a developer 30 or 40 years ago completely changed and are irrelevant since things like the internet, modern web development, app development, Stack Overflow. The same with AI. So software is changing. It's becoming really an intelligent thing. It's also becoming not deterministic. So we have to learn how to speak with it. We have to learn even how and when to trust it, especially with things like Copilot that writes the code for us. This until AI obviously takes our job and the inevitable human extinction.
Oh no.
Sorry to tell you, Liad.
What about the cats?
It's over. No, cats are fine.
Okay.
AI is intelligent. It's keeping cats around. So before AI obliterates all of us, it's still pretty limited, right? Its knowledge cutoff is in October 2021. It doesn't even know who got third place in the Eurovision.
Shocking.
And it has no external access. So for example, I asked it, what is the weather forecast for New York in the next 6 days? And it just says, I apologize, I can't answer that. But when I put on the weather plugin, then it accesses the external API, gets back the response, and formats the response back accurately in text. And the same, like Liad shows, we can use ChatGPT as an API. The same we can do with functions. So instead of plugins, we can have our own functions that do our own business logic or call the server and or get stuff from the database and tell ChatGPT, these are the functions you can use.
Wait.
And it takes the text. Wait,
yeah.
Yes.
Does it mean that all that we do is from now on is just chat UIs? Just ask text, get back text, ask text, get back text?
It's ugly, right? We don't want just to have text. We want to have UI components and everything. So we took this challenge. We don't want to build just chatbots entire life. Boo. So we took this challenge and built this cool demo that takes the text and creates the UI on the fly. So I'm proud to introduce UI on the fly. So here we connected with a function to ChatGPT API, we connected an external API to get the current weather or a weather forecast. And here we ask it, what is the weather forecast for the next 6 days in New York? Please include temperature, chances of rain, and humidity. It's a bit slow, so let's take you through what goes on behind the scenes. So we ask it, you are a helpful assistant, the same way we would do with ChatGPT. What is the weather, blah, blah, blah. And it tells us, hey, you should call this function. So it understands automatically which function to call based on the function descriptions. And then it's our job to call this function and give it back a JSON format. And now it can just read the JSON and reformat it in plain text. So it tells us the weather forecast for the next 6 days in New York, it follows blah, blah, blah. But we didn't stop here. We don't want just to show text to the user. to the user. So we initialized another AI agent, and we told him, you are an expert front-end developer with excellent graphic design skills. If you can only do that with human beings.
Think carefully about the answer.
And we told it, you are tasked with building a web page to display an API response to the user's request. And then we told him, this is the user's request. This is the response that the other AI agent gave us. And then we told it some guidance. The interface should have an appealing color palette. It should be responsive. It should use icons, etc. And before generating the HTML, we asked it, please give a short paragraph in plain text describing the proposed elements and layout. So basically, we told it to reason about the page. And then it responded. So we took this text and reasoned about what is the best UI elements to display this specific text. And it told us to visualize the data, I propose a clean and modern blah, blah, blah. I'm going to use icons, I'm going to use the title, and etc. And then we told it, please generate the HTML for the page. And this is what we get. So it actually shows it in a nice layout. It shows the correct icons based on the temperature, on the chances of rain. It's really cool. And every prompt you give it, it generates something else. So if anybody has, we also connected the NASA API and we asked it about asteroids and it gave us asteroids. We have time for one prompt from the audience. You can ask everything you want. Anybody has a prompt to ask?
Quick question.
What is the meaning of life?
Okay.
We're going to get back to it because it takes some time.
Amazing.
So these are a few things that we experimented with it. So every time it gives back something different. For example, we had to compare React to Angular. So it actually chose to put Angular and React icons one next to each other, or comparing CSS and JS frameworks. Or even make me coffee, and he says, I'm sorry, I'm not capable of making coffee, but it generated it in a very nice and funny UI. And the next thing we can do, theoretically, is connect it to our server API and embed our design library, so we can actually create a solid and a predictable library. Let's look at what came out. Meaning of life. Achievements, experiences, spiritual beliefs, and personal relationships. Thank you, ChatGPT.
It didn't add a lot of colors to the meaning of life.
Alcohol, drugs, I mean.
Okay, so is this it? Are we going to be obsolete? Because we just saw ChatGPT creating UI on the fly. No components, no React, no code was harmed when we built this demo.
Yes. No. I don't think we're going to be obsolete. And I think the best way to answer it is with a haiku. Obsolete, not quite. In shifting code, we delight. Craftsmen in the night.
Nice.
ChatGPT.
So as you've seen, we have amazing technologies ahead of us. AI is amazing. You probably noticed that you didn't see any code in our talk because the code was, we had to write so little code. All of everything we have to write was just a prompt, just text. Text was giving our demo the power. So specialize in prompts. You're awesome for sitting and listening to us. We were Adam Klein.
Thank you. Liad Yosef.